Politics. Our next guest is a politician. He is a congressman, but we're not going to start with politics. We'll bring in Pangasinan 4th District Representative Christopher Toff de Venecia. Congressman de Venecia is also a deputy majority leader. Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Good evening,
Thanks for
Congressman.
having me.
All right. First time, if I'm not mistaken.
Welcome.
This is our first time to have you. The honor is ours to have you here, sir. Thank
Popping
you.
my cheap cherry.
Now, we brought you in because we wanted to start off this discussion. You are the committee chair of the newly created House Creative Industry and Performing Arts Committee. And related to this, you have a proposal that a lot of our viewers, a lot of freelancers out there will be very interested on. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so we filed, rather refiled from the previous Congress, the Freelancers Protection Act. But this is the farthest that it's come. It's actually passed on third and final reading already in the lower house. Basically, this provides for some standard protections for our freelancers. Marami sila. Probably they're nasa 1.2 to 1.5 million based on the registered accounts on freelancer.ph. But a PayPal survey estimated them at 2% of our population. So that's like 3.6 million.
Yeah.
And in this bill, some of the protections provided for are dapat may kontrata bago mag-render ng services ang isang freelancer. It's protection for both the freelancer and the hiring party. And in the contract, nakastipulate yung minimum provisions, like what are the services that need to be rendered, what are the details of the compensation, and what's the rate, the method, and the schedule of payment. Yun yung pinaka-importante kasi minsan tapos na yung services, hindi pa rin binabayaran si freelancer.
Oo, hindi makakolekta. Dami akong kilalang ganyan.
Nako, alam mo na yan. Actually, may kakilala nga akong group of freelancers na kapag perform na sila abroad, 5-6 years later, hindi pa rin sila nababayaran. Tinakbuhan sila ng kliyente.
Okay. Is this all about employer-employee or employer or contractor-client relationship, or is this also about social benefits? I know a lot of freelancers, they fall through the loopholes kasi walang nagre-remit ng sarili nila. They have to take care of their own social security, PhilHealth, and so on. Sakop din po ba yan? But something more basic pala. How do you define a freelancer? Pwede ba? Paano yung mga may trabaho pero rumaraket pa rin on the side? Diba? Or underemployed for that matter. How do we define freelancers under this proposal?
Well, in this bill, they are any natural person or entity or no more than one natural person. So either self-employed or sole proprietor or one-person corporation. And those are basically the ones that are defined as a freelancer. They must be retained or hired as an independent contractor. And the work contracted must be according to the freelancer's own methods and without being subjected to the control of the hiring party. And the freelance.
Okay, so this is different from the contractuals as we know them, no? For example, the sales ladies in the malls, in the department stores, hindi yun kasama.
Hindi yun kasama, yeah.
Ito yung mga talagang paid on a per project basis,
right,
for a very limited time period, at least for the duration of the project, right?
That's right.
Tama ba yun? So this does not include, halimbawa, those with projects that might go on for, say, more than 6 months or 2 years ang duration ng project. Hindi yun kasama ron.
Yeah, this is very output-based, yung expectation sa kanila.
Yeah. Karamihan ba ng mga yan, Kong, anong industriya sila? Are they in media? Are they in film? Where are they exactly?
Well, they're mostly in the creative industries, which is another piece of legislation that we are championing in our committee. Creative industries in the development framework are more than 35 sectors already that we've identified. as
Wow.
aggregated into 9 strategic domains. So, kayo, you're part of the creative industries.
Yes.
Audio and audio-visual media is one such domain in which nandyan si film, television, radio, podcasts. But books and print media is also another domain in which nandyan si newspapers, magazines, of course, books, comics, graphic novels. So most of these freelancers are actually working in the creative sector.
So, kunyari yung freelancing plumber, hindi yan kasama, or freelancing construction worker, hindi yan
Ano?
covered? Hindi. Okay. All right.
So arts and entertainment mainly.
Yes, media, arts,
Yeah, multimedia.
multimedia, multimedia, arts, yeah. Those working in the heritage sector, yeah.
Yeah. So apart from compensation, what other benefits
Well,
are you intending to provide kung sakasakaling this thing is enacted into law? Kasi
well,
hindi naman pwedeng tenure yan, di ba? Kasi karamihan by project eh.
yeah. Well, besides the institutionalization of entering into a contract, it also provides for unlawful acts that shall be committed, and there are penalties for committing such. So, what are these unlawful acts? One is late payment of the compensation, which shall be 15 days after the date of payment as stated in the contract, or where there is no contract, 15 days after the rendition of services. So hindi pwedeng humigit ng 2 weeks na hindi nagbabayad in full sa freelancer. Another one is when nagkasundo na, for example, you're gonna get an X amount for the services that you'll render, and then biglang pag nag-commence ng services, nag-change yung terms, parang humingi ka ng discount, you know, or parang nag-haggle ka para bumaba. So that's not allowed. Another unlawful act is if there's an act of retaliation against the freelancer for doing the following, like for example, filing a complaint against the hiring party, or testifying.
Non-disclosure agreements, no? Mga ganon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kahit inapi-api na hindi pwedeng magsalita.
At saka
Ewan
ano,
ganyan diba?
what about, I mean, in the arts and the creative sector, what about the protection of the intellectual property of the freelancers? Lalong-lalo na yung mga kukontratahin kunwari, ang daming nangyaring ganyan, di ba? Pagkatapos may draft, may first version, at the end, hindi sa'yo napunta yung kontrata, tapos nagamit pa rin yung ginamit mo. Is this part of the considerations here?
Well, actually, that's in another piece of legislation that because we actually have a package of policy tools, not just the freelance bill. I mean, we have the creative industry development bill, but we're also amending the intellectual property code to provide, stronger protections for the freelancers. Although that is touched upon in part dun sa Eddie Garcia bill, just has also passed in third and final reading, in which one of the provisions in that bill is that the performer will have the capacity to participate in remuneration rights inalienably, meaning to say, in the subsequent broadcasts of their films, kailangan nagkakaroon pa rin sila ng bayad. Kasi in the current regime, medyo sometimes they sign away their remuneration rights, and so parang one-time, big-time bagsakan, ito yung bayad, magsastar ka sa pelikula, and then pag ipapalabas yung pelikula years later, wala nang kabayaran yung mga
So you still
artists.
get a cut from royalties, you're still entitled to royalties in perpetuity?
Yeah, oo. Parang dito lang kasi ata sa bansa na ganito yung practice. Kasi sa ibang bansa, I mean, kahit even supporting cast ka or, atmospheric talent, you're still entitled to remuneration rights. Pag nagkakaroon ng subsequent broadcast yung pelikula mo. So, the Eddie Garcia bill, one provision there sort of rectifies this problem, but we're also addressing that same problem en masse in the Intellectual Property Code amendment.
During the deliberations, what were the most contentious issues? Kasi you consulted different sectors of the industries involved, ano? Ano yung pinakamahirap na ano?
Well, siguro, going back to the freelance bill, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, diba?
Yes.
We also provided for night shift differential and hazard pay. So the night shift differential is a 10% premium for work rendered between 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And the hazard pay is a 25% premium if the freelancer will be deployed to dangerous areas as defined in the bill. So like strife-torn or embattled locations, distressed or isolated stations, prison camps, mental hospitals, laboratories or disease-infected areas, etc. And that was sort of opposed by the sectors representing, the hiring parties
Yes.
or the employers. But we were able to arrive at a compromise such that there was one clause included in the bill na it says unless a more favorable stipulation is provided for in the contract. Kasi you can't naman compute the fees for the freelancer on an hourly basis because
Right.
freelancers
Per
provide
project, di ba?
So
package.
ano yung favorable? Ano yung
Siguro yung
more
mataas.
favorable stipulations?
Oo.
Mas mataas na
Mas mataas
talent fee
siguro.
ba yan? Or ganun ba yan?
Yeah, no, I
Example.
mean, a more favorable is, definitely if it's well above the minimum wage that they're going to be getting for the services that will be rendered, then it's really up to the freelancer to be able to come to the negotiating table, diba, with the hiring party and say, okay, you know what, I'm entitled to a night shift differential, I'm entitled to a hazard pay. I hope that it can be taken into consideration as we enter into contract. And then, pag nagkasundo na yung hiring party and freelancer, edi yun na yun.
Okay, well,
So,
sa dinami ng pinag-uusapan natin so far, I'm sure a lot of people are nodding their heads at home watching this. This makes sense. Make it happen. But quick question on the client side, what are the penalties under your proposal, and what will be the mechanisms? I presume this all still goes to the Department of Labor. That's still going to be their recourse.
yes, we're adding another recourse or area of recourse for the freelancer pag, something was unfavorably done to them through the Undersecretary of Special Concerns with the DOLE. And so, cases can be elevated to that office, to that rather central office instrumentality within DOLE, even through the regional offices. And there are definitely penalties that shall await those that are going to be violating or doing any acts of violation.
Yeah, but we also have a lot of freelancers that, some are big, just like in any other industry, some can bill for a lot. Many freelancers are obviously trying to undercut the market, and that's their competitive advantage. But that means na maliliit yung mga kontrata nila. And just like any Filipino, any recourse you offer me, I'm also thinking, gaano katagal kaya yan? Is it gonna be worth my time? Do I just take my lumps here and then walk away? I mean, what guarantee do we have that these new recourses and mechanisms and penalties and protections that you're offering will actually be worth my time kung meron akong kailangan ni Angal?
I'm sorry. Hello?
Sorry. Basically, mayroon po tayong recourse, no? But how long will that take? Does the law, does the proposal give any maximum time? Do we have an idea on whether or not this is going to be efficient? Because, I might be complaining over something, let's say 5,000 pesos, 10,000 pesos, 20,000, who knows? But in a freelancer's mind, he's also thinking, kung aabutin ng taon-taon tong kasong to, hindi na bale. I'll just learn my lesson learned na lang. But what is it in the proposal that also reassures us that justice will be served and done?
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely, if a complaint is lodged, uh, you know, with the DOLE, then they're going to have to conduct the investigation, and the unlawful acts are defined in the bill. And so, if there's a clear case of violation, like late payment or retaliation or whatever, that's already proof for the DOLE to be able to really require the hiring party to be able to settle the payments and penalties, rather than if there was no recourse through the DOLE and they go through the regular court system, then to your point, it's going to be a long and drawn out process. Kung 5,000 pesos, 10,000 pesos, for example, yung fee na hindi nabayaran, yun na rin yung babayaran mo, di ba, for getting a lawyer, di ba, through the regular court system, di parang tagilid pa rin towards the freelancer. So basically, we're just trying to even out the playing field here. But we've focused the discussion right now insofar as like the relationship between the hiring party and the freelancer. Another salient provision in the freelance bill is also basically encouraging the freelancer to formalize into the economy. So it also provides for responsibilities. to the freelancer.
Is it going to encourage them to, say, form guilds the way they have them in the US, for example, di ba? May Writers Guild, may Directors Guild, and stuff like that. Does that encourage that kind of organization?
In the Eddie Garcia bill, yes. In the creative industry bill, all the services that can be extended to creative workers, most of which are freelancers, it can only be extended to freelancers or creative workers who are part of guilds. But in this particular measure, it's really about requiring freelancers to be able to register into the formal economy, registering with a BIR, and benefits redound actually from being able to do so. But then, of course, the problem with the current regime is that when a freelancer goes to a revenue district office or engages with a BIR, sometimes they don't even know how to classify the freelancer. They don't know, they don't quite understand what exactly a freelancer does, and so ang daming mga bureaucratic burdens and delays. So through this bill, we're actually creating a special lane in all RDOs for freelancers, to add to the special lane for senior citizens and PWDs, to be able to give them, an easy kind of engagement with a BIR, and then they can also obtain their receipts. And so, in so doing, so many benefits redound, like easier access or application for visas, easier to access loans from banks, and the freelancer will be able to engage with multinationals as clients para hindi na lang forever small time.
But doesn't this push up the cost of production, especially for creative companies, no? Which you're also trying to encourage in terms of, incentivizing and allowing them to create more creative work, no?
Yeah.
Especially yung mga people trailblazing kind of creative work. But if there's going to be such a bill, this could just push up the cost of production, especially because, I know this for a fact, no? Fully 40% at least goes to the payment of talent fees for many of the TV programs.
Yeah.
Dagdagan ko na rin yun kasi even in newspapers, baka mabawasan yung mga kinukuha naming contributor, di ba?
Yeah.
Kasi if you're going to dictate the rates, di ba? Medyo mababawasan ng tao yung freelance na yan.
Well, this actually doesn't dictate the rates of the freelancer. It just, I think the one that may influence the rates perhaps is the night shift differential and the hazard pay. But again, there is a compromise with hiring parties such that if a more favorable stipulation is in the contract or a favorable rate is provided for to the freelancer, then yeah, both the freelancer and the hiring party can enter into such contract. But I mean, basically, the protections that are enshrined in this proposal is really, it goes back to the contract, and that there should be a contract prior to engaging the services of a freelancer, and it protects both the hiring party and the freelancer.
I mean, Congressman, we don't have a lot of time, but I do want to touch on your committee because honestly,
Oh, yeah.
it's a refreshing thing to even realize. I mean, when I read it, you were introduced as chairman of the newly created committee on the creative industry and performing arts. And uh, first is how new is new, and secondly, I mean, I'm all for this, but please, by all means, make the pitch to the public why we need a committee and policymakers dedicated to the creative industry and, for that matter, to a creative economy.
Right. Well, thank you. How new is new? October of 2020.
Oh, pandemic already.
And there was never,
That's already
I mean,
pandemic
in the
period.
entire history of the Philippine Congress, we've never had a committee dedicated to this.
Yes, that's
Okay.
right. Actually, the committee started as an informal block of legislators. We were all just really passionate about arts and culture. But soon after, we encountered Paolo Mercado of the Creative Economy Council, and he opened our eyes to creative industries and what that's all about. And we didn't realize that we had such a limited understanding of it. There were so many questions in our head. Parang, is this like South Korea?
Yes.
And what they're doing. And then as we did like a deep dive into this sector, parang, oh gosh, uh, this Filipino fascination with K-pop, K-drama, Crash Landing on You, Yoon Bin, BTS,
Lucci.
Blackpink. I mean, these are creative consequences of an intentional policy shift on the
Yes.
part of the South Korean government.
That's true.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
in 1997, the South Korean president then, Kim Dae-jung, had to figure out like a sort of like a new growth strategy because their main economic driver, which was cheap manufacturing, was lost to them. And this was during the wake of the Asian financial crisis. So, I mean, when you're in the middle of a crisis, either you do business as usual or business unusual. So they did a business unusual pivot towards investing in their creative industries, and now decades later, they're reaping those benefits.
Yeah.
And so that's basically what we are endeavoring to do in this committee. I mean, we have all these bills that have been filed. Our pet bill is the Creative Industries Development Bill, which will really accelerate this sector, which based on 2014 WIPO and IPO failed study using 2010 statistics and data, the creative industries contributed 7.34% to our GDP.
Wow.
So it's quite significant. And that contribution doesn't even account for freelancers.
So nga, yun yan sabihin ko, hindi pa nakakasingil yung mga freelancer doon.
Hindi pa siya na take into consideration. And not to mention, there are other sectors that weren't accounted for yet.
Yeah.
For example, gastronomy. And
Yeah.
papasok yung mga F&B natin, as well as content creation. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've heard news that our vloggers from, Tulfo to Alex Gonzaga to Mimi, they're earning in the millions. And then now you have apps as well, like Kumu and Laika, which are also, strong revenue generators for the creative economy. And so basically, we are wanting to accelerate this sector. We're also in the middle of a crisis. This is a low-hanging fruit that should be picked already. It's ripe for the picking. It's been ripe for the picking. We just really need to invest in it.
It's ripe for another episode. We will have to invite you and let's talk about creative economy. Tagaan nyo sa bato. We will be inviting you and your
Yeah.
friends and other people who have been looking at it and championing this for a long time.
Yeah.
Maraming salamat po. Until then, maraming salamat, Congressman De Venecia.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Congressman
Congressman.
Toff.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll need to take a break. Stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back.